Rin had always believed that machines behave better when spoken to politely, which was why he found himself whispering apologies to a sealed panel that refused to open, as if the metal might take offense and lock him out permanently. The corridor around him hummed with a soft, constant vibration, the kind that sank into your bones if you stood still long enough. He shifted his weight and tapped the diagnostic tablet strapped to his wrist, watching as the screen flickered, froze, and then politely informed him that it was thinking. Rian sighed. "Take your time," he muttered. "No rush. It's not like this is an emergency system or anything." The tablet blinked back at him with the calm indifference of a machine that knew it would never be blamed for anything. The emergency escape pods lined the curved wall beside him, identical, silent, and very much not supposed to be active. According to the maintenance schedule, they were in passive standby. No launch readiness, no occupant detection, nothing that could surprise a technician who was underpaid and mildly sleep-deprived. Rian scratched the back of his neck, glancing at Pod 7 as its indicator light pulsed faintly. "That's new," he murmured. He leaned closer, narrowing his eyes as if the pod might confess its secrets under scrutiny. The light wasn't red, which would have meant danger, and it wasn't green, which would have meant everything was fine. It was something in between, a hesitant glow. Rian didn't like hesitant glows. In his experience, hesitation in machines usually meant something was about to become very certain, very quickly, and very inconveniently. "Okay," he said, straightening slightly. "Let's not panic. It's just a light. Lights do things." He tapped the panel again. The tablet displayed a list of possible statuses, none of which matched what he was seeing. Rian scrolled, frowned, and then scrolled faster, as if the correct answer might appear if he looked desperate enough. "Great," he whispered. "Mystery light, my favorite." He reached for the manual override on the pod's hatch. The metal felt colder than the rest of the corridor, as though it had opinions about being touched. Rian hesitated, then chuckled nervously. "Relax," he told himself. "It's just a pod. Worst case, it doesn't open, and you pretend you were never here." He pressed the control. The hatch slid open with a soft, obedient hiss. Rian leaned forward, already forming a complaint about the lighting calibration inside, and then stopped so abruptly that his thoughts seemed to collide with each other and fall apart. Someone was sitting inside. For a moment, Rian didn't react. His brain, accustomed to simple problems like loose wiring and stubborn circuits, refused to process the existence of a person where there absolutely should not be one. He blinked once, twice, as if the image might correct itself. It didn't. She sat perfectly still in the far seat, her posture composed yet somehow uncertain, as if she had been caught in the act of existing quietly. At first glance, she looked human. Too human, Rian thought, in the way that made his instincts uneasy. But then he noticed the subtle differences. The gentle curve of her long ears, rising delicately through strands of dark hair, angled slightly downward in a way that suggested not alertness, but caution. She was looking at him, not with fear exactly, not even with surprise. It was something more fragile than that, something that made Rian suddenly aware of how loud his breathing was. "Oh," he said. It was not the most impressive thing he had ever said. The silence that followed stretched thin, like a surface about to crack. Rian opened his mouth again, then closed it, then opened it once more, cycling through several possible sentences and discarding all of them for being either inappropriate, insufficient, or completely absurd. This is maintenance," he managed, gesturing vaguely at the tablet as if it explained everything. She tilted her head slightly. The movement was small, but her ears followed it with a softness that made the gesture feel twice as expressive. "I see," she said. Her voice was quiet, careful, each word placed with precision, as though she was stepping across something fragile. Rian nodded too quickly. "Yes, good. Yes." He immediately regretted everything he had just said. The pod's interior lighting shifted subtly, responding to the open hatch, and for a brief second, Rian considered the possibility that if he simply stepped back and closed the door, the entire situation might politely undo itself. "I didn't know anyone was in here," he added, because stating the obvious felt safer than attempting anything intelligent. She watched him for a moment longer, then lowered her gaze slightly, as if the act of being observed had weight to it. "I was not supposed to be found," she said. Rian blinked. "Right," he replied. "Of course. That makes sense." It did not make sense. He shifted his stance, trying to decide whether he should leave, stay, or pretend he had suddenly forgotten how doors worked. His instincts, which were usually quite reliable when it came to avoiding complicated situations, were currently engaged in a heated argument with each other. "Well," he said slowly, "I can come back later." He took a small step backward. The hatch began to close. At the exact same moment, the pod's internal systems awakened with a sudden, decisive hum. Rian froze. "Oh no," he whispered. The interface inside the pod flickered to life, lines of data cascading across its display with unsettling enthusiasm. A calm, pleasant voice filled the confined space. "Launch sequence initiated." Rian stared at the panel. "No," he said. "Please stand by," the voice continued. "No," Rian repeated, louder this time, as if volume might convince the machine to reconsider. He lunged forward, reaching for the controls, his fingers hovering uncertainly over a series of buttons that all looked equally confident in their ability to make things worse. "I didn't even press anything," he muttered. Behind him, the hatch sealed shut with a final, irreversible sound. Rian turned slowly. The girl, no, the princess, because somewhere in the back of his mind a very delayed realization was beginning to scream, was still watching him, her expression unchanged, her long ears slightly raised now, as if even they were listening for what would happen next. The countdown began. Rian let out a short, helpless laugh. "Well," he said, "this is new." The countdown did not feel urgent in the way Rian expected. It was calm, polite even, each number spoken with the same gentle tone one might use to remind someone about a missed appointment. That, more than anything, made it worse. 10, the pod announced. Rian pointed at the console as if accusing it of betrayal. "You can stop now," he said firmly. "That was a good joke. Very funny. Let's all relax." The pod, which had no sense of humor and no respect for technicians in mild distress, continued. 9. Rian slapped a random panel. Nothing happened. He slapped another one, slightly harder, as though enthusiasm might improve the outcome. "I'm serious," he muttered. "This is unauthorized enthusiasm." 8. He glanced over his shoulder at her. She had not moved. Her hands were folded neatly in her lap, her posture composed, her expression attentive. That was the worst part. She was watching him fail in real time. "Just so we're clear," Rian said quickly, gesturing between them, "this is not my usual level of competence." She blinked once, slowly, as if filing that information somewhere important. 7. Rian turned back to the controls, scrolling frantically through the interface. The screen responded with cheerful efficiency, presenting options that all seemed designed for someone who actually knew what they were doing. Manual override, he whispered. "Where do they hide that?" 6. He pressed a button labeled Confirm. The system immediately asked him to confirm the confirmation. Rian stared at it. "This is not the time for philosophical questions," he snapped. 5. He hit cancel. The system thanked him. 4. Rian exhaled sharply and leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, new plan. We accept our fate. We embrace the chaos." 3. He looked at her again, half expecting panic or at least a hint of alarm. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her long ears following the motion with a quiet grace. "Is this," she asked, her voice soft but clear, "a normal part of your work?" Rian paused. "No," he said. "This is the part where I usually resign." 2. The pod vibrated, a low rising hum building beneath their feet. Rian grabbed the edge of the console instinctively. 1. For a brief, suspended moment, everything held still. Then the world dropped away. The launch was smooth, far too smooth, Rian thought, for something that had just ruined his entire day. The force pressed him back slightly, not violently, but enough to remind him that gravity was no longer entirely on their side. Outside the small viewport, The interior of the ship slid past in a blur of metal and light, and then, abruptly, there was nothing but the vast, silent curve of space. The hum settled into a steady rhythm. Rian blinked. "Okay," he said after a moment. "We're flying." He waited for that to feel less surreal. It didn't. He pushed himself upright, cautiously releasing his grip on the console as the pod stabilized. The display shifted, replacing the countdown with a calm stream of telemetry data. "Low orbit achieved," the system informed them pleasantly. "Rescue protocols initiated. Estimated retrieval time, 6 hours." Rian stared at the screen. 6 hours, he repeated. He turned slowly. She was still watching him. "Good news, he said, forcing a smile that felt more like a structural failure. "We're not going to die immediately." There was a pause. "Itim. Is that the only category of good news available?" she asked. Rian hesitated. "At the moment, yes." He let out a breath and slid into the nearest seat, the tension in his shoulders finally catching up with him. For a few seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence was different now, less sharp but no less present. It filled the small space of the capsule, settling between them like something alive. Rian tapped the armrest lightly, then winced as the sound echoed more than he expected. "Right," he said. "So, introduction. That's a thing people do." He gestured to himself. "I'm Rian. Technician. Occasional victim of poor timing." He looked at her, waiting. She seemed to consider this carefully, as if deciding whether names were safe to share. "Ale," she said at last. Rian nodded. "Nice to meet you, Ale. I would have preferred literally any other location. But here we are." A faint pause followed. Then very subtly, the corner of her mouth moved. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close enough to surprise him. Rian leaned back slightly, blinking in mild disbelief. "Did I just succeed at humor?" he murmured. "That's new." Ali lowered her gaze for a moment, her fingers adjusting slightly in her lap, as if the expression had caught her off guard as well. "You are different from the others," she said. Rian raised an eyebrow. "That is the most polite way anyone has ever said that to me." He glanced around the capsule, then back at her. "So," he added, rubbing the back of his neck, "just to clarify something that is definitely already obvious to me, and not at all a delayed realization, you're not just someone hiding in an escape pod, are you?" She hesitated. The silence stretched just long enough to confirm the answer before she spoke. "I am not," she said. Rian closed his eyes briefly. "Of course you're not," he muttered. "That would have been too easy." He let out a small, breathless laugh, shaking his head. "I'm trapped in orbit," he said, "with someone important enough that I'm definitely going to get in trouble for this." Ali looked at him again, her expression steady, her long ears angled slightly forward now, as if she were listening more closely. "You are already in trouble," she said gently. Rian considered that. That's fair." Another pause settled between them, quieter this time. Then after a moment, Rian glanced back at the viewport, at the distant stars slowly drifting past. "Well," he said, exhaling, 6 hours." He shifted in his seat, glancing at her again with a mixture of nerves and reluctant curiosity. "Do you usually spend that much time with strangers?" Ali was quiet for a second. Then she shook her head, just slightly. "No," she said. Rian nodded. "Great," he replied. "Me neither. This should go very smoothly." The capsule settled into its orbit with a quiet certainty, like a thought that had decided not to leave. Rian found that more unsettling than the launch. Motion was one thing. Motion meant something was happening. This stillness, this slow drift above the curve of a distant world, felt like being placed on pause. He tapped the side of the console again, softer this time, as if the machine might be more cooperative if approached with respect. 6 hours, he muttered. "That's not terrible. That's like one very long maintenance shift, without tools, or purpose, or dignity." The system responded with a faint chime, as though acknowledging his suffering. Ali sat across from him, her posture unchanged, though something about her presence had shifted. She was no longer as withdrawn as before. Her long ears were angled slightly upward now, attentive, as if the silence between them had become something she was trying to understand rather than avoid. Rian noticed this and immediately became aware of how much space his own nervous energy was taking up. "So," he said, clasping his hands together, "I feel like we should establish some ground rules." She looked at him. "Rules?" she repeated. "Yes," Rian said quickly. "Important ones. Like, no panicking. Panicking is inefficient. Also, if the pod starts making strange noises, we pretend it's normal." "It is already making strange noises," Ale said softly. Rian paused. "That's true," he admitted. "Okay, revised rule. We ignore the strange noises." A faint flicker of amusement crossed her expression again, brief but unmistakable. Rian stared at her for a second, then pointed. "There it is again," he said. "You almost smiled." Ali blinked, her gaze shifting slightly downward. "I did not," she said. "You did," Rian insisted. "It was subtle, but I saw it. I'm very observant in moments of crisis." "That is an unusual skill," she replied. "It's the only one I have," Rian said. "That and apologizing to machinery." He glanced at the console again. "Which, by the way, I still think would help if this pod had feelings." "It does not," Ali said. Rian tilted his head. "You sound very certain." "I have spent time in escape pods before," she said. Rian froze. "You have?" She nodded once. "During training." Rian leaned back slowly. "Of course you have training," he muttered. "That makes sense. Princess, training. Meanwhile, my training consisted of someone handing me a wrench and saying, 'Try not to make it worse.'" Ali studied him for a moment. "Did you make it worse?" she asked. Rian considered this carefully. "Statistically," he said, "yes." There was a pause, then, unexpectedly, Ali let out a very quiet sound, almost like a breath catching, but lighter. It took Rian a second to realize it was a laugh. He blinked. "That counts," he said, pointing again. "That definitely counts." She looked slightly startled by her own reaction, her fingers tightening briefly before relaxing again. "I am not accustomed to this," she said. "To laughing?" Rian asked. "To speaking without purpose," she corrected. Rian leaned back in his seat, folding his arms loosely. "Speaking without purpose is my specialty," he said. "I highly recommend it. Very freeing. Also, it confuses people, which is a bonus." Ale tilted her head again, her long ears shifting with the motion. "You do not seem afraid," she said. Rian stared at her. "I am extremely afraid," he replied. "I'm just hiding it under layers of questionable humor and denial." He gestured around the capsule. "I mean, I'm trapped in a metal container, floating in space, with someone important enough that I probably need to apologize in advance for existing in the same oxygen supply." Ale was quiet for a moment. "You do not need to apologize," she said. Rian gave her a small, crooked smile. "I appreciate that," he said. "But I'm going to do it anyway. It's a reflex." The capsule hummed softly, a steady rhythm that seemed to settle into the background of their conversation. Outside the viewport, the stars drifted slowly, distant and indifferent. Rian followed her gaze as she looked toward them. "Do you ever get used to that?" he asked. "To what?" she said. He nodded toward the stars. "The scale of it," he said. "Everything being that big." Ali was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on the distant light. "No," she said finally, "but I was taught to behave as if I am." Rian nodded slowly. "That sounds exhausting." "It is," she said. He glanced at her again, really looking this time, not at her title, not at the implications of who she was, but at the way she held herself, carefully as if every movement had been practiced and measured. "You know," he said, "for someone who hides in escape pods, you're very composed." Ale's gaze shifted back to him. "I am not composed," she said quietly. Rian raised an eyebrow. "No?" She shook her head just slightly. "I am practiced," she said. Rian leaned forward a little, resting his elbows on his knees. "Okay," he said. "That's a difference." He nodded once, as if confirming something to himself. "I get that," he added. "I'm not confident. I'm just used to pretending I know what I'm doing." Ali studied him, her expression thoughtful. You do not seem to pretend, she said. Rian laughed softly. That's because I'm bad at it, he replied. The silence that followed was lighter now, less like a barrier and more like a space they were both beginning to understand. Rian leaned back again, exhaling. All right, he said. We've established that neither of us knows how to handle this situation properly. He glanced at her with a faint grin. I think that's a good start. Ali's lips moved again, just slightly. And this time, she did not deny it. The capsule adjusted its orbit with a subtle shift that Rian felt more than heard, a gentle pull that made the air seem to tilt for just a second before settling again. He looked up at the console, suspicious. Was that intentional, he asked? Or are we drifting into something dramatic? Trajectory stable, the pod replied in its usual calm tone. Rian narrowed his eyes. That doesn't answer the question, he muttered. Ale watched him, her posture softer now, less rigid than before. The change was slight but noticeable, like a thread loosening in something that had been pulled too tight for too long. You speak to it often, she said. To the pod? Rian glanced at it, then back at her. Yes, it's the most responsive thing here, and that includes me. Ali tilted her head, her long ears following the motion with quiet precision. It does not respond, she said. It does, Rian insisted, just not emotionally, which honestly makes it easier to deal with. He tapped the console again lightly. See? Reliable? Predictable? No expectations. Ali considered this. Is that what you prefer? She asked. Rian opened his mouth, then paused. The question landed somewhere deeper than he expected. I prefer not being evaluated every time I say something, he said after a moment. Machines don't do that. They either work or they don't. People, he gestured vaguely. People keep score. Alay's gaze shifted slightly, thoughtful. In the court, she said, everything is observed. Rian let out a quiet breath. That sounds exhausting. It is necessary, she replied. Necessary for who? Rian asked. She hesitated. For everyone, she said, though the words felt practiced. Rian leaned back, studying her for a second, then shook his head slightly. I don't believe you, he said. Ali blinked. You do not? No, Rian said. That sounded like something you were told to say, not something you wanted to say. A faint tension returned to her posture, subtle but present. Her fingers shifted in her lap, a small movement that seemed to betray the calm she was trying to maintain. I do not always distinguish between the two, she admitted. Rian nodded slowly. Yeah, he said. That happens. The capsule hummed softly around them, the steady rhythm almost comforting now. Outside, the stars continued their slow drift, indifferent to the small, strange conversation unfolding in orbit. Rian glanced at the display. 4 hours left, he said. He made a face. Time is moving in a very disrespectful way. Ale looked at him. It feels slow, she said. It feels like it's judging me, Rian replied. Like it knows I'm going to say something awkward next and it's giving me extra time to reconsider. Alay's lips curved slightly again. You could choose not to speak, she said. Rian stared at her. That sounds dangerous, he said. If I stop talking, I might start thinking. She tilted her head. That is worse? For me? Rian said. Yes, absolutely. A quiet pause followed, but it wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It felt shared. Ale shifted slightly in her seat, her posture relaxing just enough to suggest she was no longer bracing against something unseen. When I was younger, she said slowly, I was told that silence was a form of strength. Rian listened, his expression softening. And do you believe that? He asked. Ali's gaze moved to the viewport again, to the distant stars. I believed it was expected, she said. Rian nodded. That's different, he said. Yes, she replied. He leaned forward slightly, resting his arms on his knees. You know, he said, where I come from, silence usually means something's broken. Ale glanced back at him. Broken? Yeah, Rian said. Either the system's down or someone forgot to connect something important. Silence isn't natural. He smiled faintly. It's usually a sign you should start hitting things until they respond. Ali blinked. You hit things? She asked. Only gently, Rian said quickly. with professional intent. Another small pause. Then, unexpectedly, Ali let out a soft, quiet laugh again. Clearer this time, less restrained. Rien froze for a second, then grinned. "That's two," he said. "I'm keeping track now." Ale looked slightly embarrassed, her gaze lowering again. "I am not accustomed to this," she repeated. Rien nodded. "Yeah," he said. "I figured." He leaned back again, exhaling slowly. "For what it's worth," he added, "you're doing great." She looked at him, surprised. "Doing what?" she asked. "Being a person," Ryan said simply. The words hung in the air for a moment, quiet but steady. Alay's expression shifted, something softer passing through it, something uncertain, but not unpleasant. "I was trained to be more than that," she said. Rien tilted his head. "Sounds complicated," he replied. "It is," she said. He considered her for a moment, then shrugged lightly. "Maybe more isn't always better," he said. "Sometimes just enough is harder." Alay's long ears lifted slightly, as if catching something in his words. "Just enough," she repeated. Rien nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Like, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to not accidentally launch yourself into orbit with a technician." Ale blinked. "That was not my intention," she said. "I know," Rien replied, "but it's still a high bar to clear." For a second there was silence. Then Alay's lips curved again, this time unmistakably. Rien leaned back, folding his arms with quiet satisfaction. "Three," he said. The capsule continued to drift, steady and quiet, carrying them both a little further away from everything they were supposed to be. The capsule lights dimmed slightly, adjusting to a lower power cycle, and for a moment the interior felt smaller, quieter, as if the space itself had decided to listen more closely. Rien noticed it immediately and looked up. "Did it just get more thoughtful in here?" he asked. "Energy conservation mode activated," the pod replied. Rien nodded slowly. "Of course," he said. "Even the capsule is calmer than me." He shifted in his seat, stretching his legs as much as the limited space allowed, which was not much. His knee bumped lightly against the console, and he winced. "Perfect design," he muttered. "Very accommodating for people who don't have legs." Ali watched him, her posture now noticeably different from when they had first met. She no longer sat as if she were being observed by an invisible audience. Instead, she leaned back slightly, her shoulders less rigid, her long ears relaxed in a way that made her seem younger somehow. "You move often," she said. Rien glanced at her. "That's because if I stay still, I start overthinking everything," he replied. "Movement is a defense mechanism." "Against what?" she asked. "Reality," Rien said. She considered this for a moment. "That seems ineffective," she said. Rien smiled faintly. "It is," he admitted, "but it keeps me busy." The soft hum of the capsule continued, steady and almost comforting now. Outside, the curve of the planet shifted slowly beneath them, a distant glow tracing the edge of the horizon. Rien followed her gaze. "You've seen this before," he said. "Yes," Ale replied. "And it still looks like that?" he asked. "I was hoping it would get less overwhelming the second time." "It does not," she said. Rien sighed. "Good," he muttered. "At least something is consistent." A brief silence settled again, but it no longer felt heavy. It felt inhabited. Ale shifted slightly, her fingers brushing against the edge of her seat as if testing the reality of where she was. "When I entered the pod," she said slowly, "I intended to remain unseen." Rien raised an eyebrow. "You picked the wrong place for that," he said. "Pods are very discoverable." "I believe the maintenance schedule would keep others away," she said. Rien gave her a look. "That schedule also believed I would finish my work on time," he replied. "We both made optimistic assumptions." Ali's lips curved again, faint but present. "I did not expect you," she said. "Neither did I," Rien said. "If it helps, I don't usually surprise myself like this." She tilted her head slightly. "You seem surprised often," she said. Rien paused. That's fair," he admitted. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees again, his gaze drifting toward the floor. "For what it's worth," he added, I wasn't supposed to be there at that exact time. I was avoiding a system recalibration. Ale looked at him. You avoided your task? She asked. Yes, Rian said. Professionally. She blinked. That is not how that word is used. It is where I come from, Rian replied. A small, quiet laugh escaped her again. Softer this time, but more natural. Less restrained. Rian pointed at her immediately. 4, he said. She lowered her gaze, but this time she did not try to hide it as much. You are counting, she said. Yes, Rian replied. It's important to track progress. Progress toward what? She asked. Rian hesitated, then shrugged lightly. Toward proving that this situation is not completely terrible, he said. Ale was quiet for a moment. It is not terrible, she said. Rian glanced at her, surprised. No? He asked. She shook her head slightly. It is. Unusual, she said, but not terrible. Rian leaned back slowly, considering that. I'll take that, he said. The capsule hummed again, a slightly different tone this time, as if adjusting something subtle in its systems. Environmental balance optimized, it announced. Rian nodded. Thank you, he said automatically. Ale watched him. You thanked it again, she said. Yes, Rian replied. Positive reinforcement. It cannot feel encouraged, she said. Rian shrugged. Maybe not, he said, but I can. Ale tilted her head, her long ears shifting gently. That is enough? She asked. For me? Rian said. Yeah, most of the time it is. She looked at him for a long moment, her expression thoughtful, as if she were trying to understand something that did not fit neatly into the structure she was used to. In the court, she said slowly, encouragement is rare. Rian frowned slightly. That sounds like a terrible management strategy, he said. It is considered discipline, she replied. Rian leaned back, shaking his head. I prefer my method, he said. Lower expectations, more snacks, occasional success. Ale blinked. Snacks? She repeated. Rian froze. I regret bringing that up, he said quietly. Now I'm thinking about food. He glanced around the capsule. Do we have food? He asked the pod. Emergency rations available, it replied. Rian's eyes lit up. See? He said, pointing. Things are improving. A small compartment slid open with a soft click, revealing 2 neatly packaged ration bars. Rian stared at them. They look like disappointment, he said. Ale leaned slightly forward, studying them. They are nutritionally complete, she said. That's what worries me, Rian replied. He picked one up, turning it over in his hands as if it might reveal hidden secrets. Well, he said, this is either going to be the highlight of our situation or the exact opposite. He hesitated, then took a bite. There was a long pause. It tastes like regret, he said. Ale watched him carefully. May I try? She asked. Rian blinked. Are you sure? He said. I don't want to be responsible for your first disappointment in orbit. She reached for the second bar, examining it briefly before taking a small bite. She paused. Rian leaned forward slightly. Well? He asked. Ale considered it for a moment, her expression calm, composed. It is, efficient, she said. Rian laughed softly. That is the most polite way anyone has ever said something tastes terrible, he replied. Ale's lips curved again. 5, Rian said quietly. The capsule drifted on, silent and steady, carrying them through the slow passage of time as something unspoken continued to take shape between them. The capsule's hum had settled into something almost rhythmic, a quiet pulse that made the passing of time feel softer, less sharp around the edges. Rian found himself sinking to it without realizing, tapping his fingers lightly against his knee before stopping, catching himself, then starting again anyway. 3 hours, he said, glancing at the display. Time is finally moving at a speed I can tolerate. Ali followed his gaze, her expression thoughtful. It feels shorter now, she said. Rian nodded. That's because we're distracted, he replied. Distraction is the most powerful force in the universe. That and bad decisions. She tilted her head slightly. You consider this a bad decision? She asked. Rian blinked. I consider everything leading up to this a bad decision, he said. This part is just the consequence. Ali looked at him for a moment, then shifted her gaze toward the viewport again. The light from the distant planet cast a soft glow across her face, outlining the delicate curve of her long ears. When I am returned, she said quietly, this will be considered an incident. Rian winced. Yeah, he said. That sounds official. I don't like it already. There will be questions, she continued. There are always questions, Rian replied. The important thing is to answer them confidently, even if you have no idea what you're saying. Ale glanced back at him. That seems unwise. It is, Rian admitted, but it works surprisingly often. A small pause followed. Then Ale spoke again, more slowly this time. They will ask why I was in the pod. Rian hesitated, then leaned back slightly. Do you want to answer that? He asked. She was silent for a moment. No, she said. Rian nodded. Then don't, he said simply. She looked at him, a flicker of uncertainty in her expression. It is not that simple, she said. It never is, Rian replied, but sometimes pretending it is helps. Ale considered that, her fingers lightly tracing the edge of the seat again. And you, she asked, what will you say? Rian let out a quiet breath. That I made a mistake, he said. That's usually safe. People expect that from me. Ali frowned slightly. You say that as if it is acceptable, she said. Rian shrugged. It is, he replied. For me. He glanced at her, then away again. Different expectations, he added. Ali's gaze lingered on him. Thoughtful. That is unfair, she said. Rian smiled faintly. Yeah, he said, but it's consistent. The capsule adjusted slightly again, a gentle shift that barely registered this time. The system chimed softly. Rescue vessel en route. Estimated arrival. 2 hours. Rian sat up a little straighter. Oh, he said. That's soon. The word hung in the air longer than he expected. Ale lowered her gaze slightly, her posture tightening just a fraction. Yes, she said. Rian nodded, then immediately looked for something to say that wouldn't sound like what he was thinking. Well, he began, that's good. Very good. Means we didn't accidentally become permanent residents of orbit. Ale gave a small nod. Yes, she said again. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the uncertain silence from before, or the careful silence of two strangers. It was heavier, quieter, as if something had shifted without either of them quite knowing how to address it. Rian cleared his throat. So, he said a little too quickly, when this opens, I assume there will be a lot of important people. Yes, Ale replied. Right, Rian said. Important people who will look at me and immediately decide I am a problem. Ale looked at him. You are not a problem, she said. Rian gave a small crooked smile. That's very kind of you, he said, but I have a long history of being interpreted incorrectly. Ali's expression softened slightly. They will not interpret me incorrectly, she said. Rian tilted his head. No, he said. They won't. He hesitated, then added more quietly. They won't need to. Ale was silent for a moment. Then she spoke, her voice softer than before. It was easier here, she said. Rian blinked, caught off guard by the sudden honesty. Yeah, he said after a moment. It was. He leaned back again, staring at the ceiling for a second before letting his gaze drift back toward her. No expectations, he added. No roles. Just two people trying not to accidentally break a spaceship. Ali's lips curved faintly. We did not break it, she said. Rian pointed at the console. It broke itself, he said. Very important distinction. A brief pause. Then Ale let out a quiet breath, something almost like a sigh. When I return, she said, I will not be able to speak like this. Rian felt that settle somewhere uncomfortable. Like what? He asked. She looked at him directly. Like myself, she said. Rian held her gaze for a second, then looked away, rubbing the back of his neck. That's, not great, he said. No, she agreed. Another silence followed, but this one wasn't empty. It was full of things neither of them quite knew how to say. Rian shifted slightly in his seat, then forced a small smile. Well, he said, we still have 2 hours. Ale nodded. Yes, she said. Rian glanced at her, then added, that's enough time for at least 3 more laughs. Ale looked at him, a hint of surprise in her expression. You are still counting, she said. Of course, Rian replied. I'm committed now. For a moment she simply watched him. Then very softly her lips curved again. Rian smiled, quieter this time. 6, he said. The capsule lights brightened gradually, shifting from their quiet, dim glow to something clearer, more official, as if even the machine understood that whatever existed inside this small space was about to end. Rescue vessel in proximity, the pod announced. Rian didn't look at the display this time. He was already watching the viewport, where a distant shape was growing larger, sleek, controlled, unmistakably deliberate in a way the capsule had never been. Well, he said softly, here comes the part where everything becomes complicated again. Ale sat very still across from him, but it wasn't the same stillness as before. This one had structure, purpose, the careful alignment of someone preparing to step back into a role that fit too tightly. Yes, she said. The word felt final in a way Rian didn't like. The rescue vessel moved into position with precise, quiet authority, its hull reflecting the distant starlight. Mechanical arms extended, locking onto the capsule with a firm, inevitable connection. The faint tremor of docking ran through the walls around them. Rian exhaled slowly. Okay, he said, mostly to himself. No sudden movements, no accidental comments. Minimal existing. Ali glanced at him. You intend to be invisible again, she said. Rian gave a small shrug. I'm very good at it, he replied. She watched him for a moment, her long ears angled slightly forward as if trying to hold on to something that was already slipping. I do not think that is true, she said. Rian looked at her, surprised. That's because you met me under unusual circumstances, he said. Very low expectations. The capsule door mechanisms engaged with a series of precise clicks, each one sounding louder than it should have. Ale straightened. The change was immediate. It was subtle. Just a shift in posture, a lift of her chin, a stilling of her hands. But it transformed her. The softness that had grown over the past hours didn't disappear, but it moved beneath the surface, hidden behind something practiced, something expected. Rian noticed it instantly. There it is, he said quietly. Ale did not look away from him. Yes, she said. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then Rian let out a small breath and nodded once, as if confirming something to himself. Right, he said. This is how it goes. The final seal disengaged with a clean, decisive sound. The hatch opened. Light flooded in. Bright, structured, accompanied by the presence of people who move with certainty and purpose. Voices followed, calm but urgent, layered with protocol. Princess Ale! They stopped when they saw her already standing. She stepped forward, composed, her expression calm in a way that left no room for uncertainty. I am here, she said. Her voice had changed, not in sound but in shape. It carried weight now, expectation, the careful precision of someone who knew exactly how each word would be received. Rian stayed where he was. For a moment, no one seemed to notice him, which was exactly how it usually went. Then one of the figures glanced his way. And him? Someone asked. Rian raised a hand slightly. Hello, he said. I can explain, poorly, but with enthusiasm. No one laughed. He nodded to himself. Worth a try, he muttered. 2 personnel stepped closer, not aggressively, but with the kind of focus that suggested he had already been categorized as something that needed to be processed. Rian stood slowly, brushing imaginary dust off his sleeve, as if that might improve his situation. I'd just like to clarify, he said, that I did not intentionally launch a princess into orbit today. That was a collaborative accident. One of them blinked. Collaborative? They repeated. Rian hesitated. Mostly me, he admitted. Before anyone could respond, Ali spoke. He is not at fault, she said. The effect was immediate. The tension in the room shifted, subtle but undeniable. The personnel nearest to Rian paused, exchanging brief glances. Rian looked at her. That was not part of the pattern. That is not accurate, one of them began carefully. It is, Ale said, her tone calm but firm. The system initiated launch due to a fault in the pod's internal sequence. He attempted to stop it. Rian opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I did try, he said quietly, mostly to himself. The personnel hesitated, recalibrating. Rian stared at Ale. She did not look at him, not yet, but her words had already changed something. The shape of the situation shifted just slightly, enough to matter. Rian felt it, and for the first time he didn't step back from it. He straightened a little, not much, but enough that his posture no longer looked like an apology. Also, he added, a bit more steadily, the confirmation system is poorly designed. It asks too many questions at a critical moment. One of the officers frowned. That is noted, they said. Rian nodded. Thank you, he replied. There was a pause, then Ali turned, just slightly, just enough that her gaze met his. For a second, the practiced composure shifted, something softer passing through it, something familiar. Rian, she said. His name, spoken like that, felt different. He blinked. Yeah, he said. Ale held his gaze for a moment, then said quietly, 7. Rian froze. Then slowly a small smile appeared. That counts? He asked. Her lips curved, just slightly. It does, she said. The moment passed. The space between them shifted again, filling with everything that came with the open hatch, the waiting world, the roles they were stepping back into. Rian nodded once. All right, he said softly. He took a step back, letting the personnel guide him, but this time he didn't shrink into it. He moved with it, steady, aware. As he was escorted away, he glanced back once. Ale was already surrounded, already becoming what she needed to be. But for a brief second, her long ears tilted, just slightly, in a way no one else seemed to notice. Rian did. He let out a quiet breath. 6 hours, he murmured. Then he shook his head, a faint, thoughtful smile lingering. Not bad, he added, and for once he didn't feel invisible.